According to a recent report from Pro Football Talk, the NFL are looking to cut down their preseason to just 2 games this year. Now, obviously, there are usually 4, so when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, the idea of having 2 less preseason games is both a blessing and a curse, and we're going to get into both of those here in today's video. Before we get started though, guys, as always, a massive thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this content. If you do enjoy it, just hitting that like button really does mean a lot, and leave your comments down below letting me know if you would want to adapt a preseason format of just 2 games forever and not just in this very unique circumstance. And if you're not already getting your daily dose of Philadelphia sports coverage from phillysportsnetwork.com, then I would absolutely love it if you could take a couple minutes every day just to read what we're putting out. We may or may not have a very special announcement coming soon. I think the first point we need to make about this is obviously that people have been hammering to get this preseason format changed for quite some time now, because there are so many injuries that happen in those 4 games and seasons can change in an instant, on their head, flipped around. We saw Carson Wentz as a rookie take a hit against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Zach Ertz had to miss time that very same season. Now, the Eagles haven't really had a preseason injury derail them. I mean, they just have all their injuries in the regular season, so they don't worry about that. However, there's nothing more heartbreaking than seeing a franchise talent lose their entire campaign because of a preseason injury that, in all grand scheme of things, is pretty needless. You don't need 28, 29, 30-year-olds who've been around the league for several years playing against guys scrapping to make the roster in the 3rd week of preseason. I mean, we all remember that preseason when Michael Kendricks was seemingly playing every single snap under the sun. It just doesn't make a ton of sense, and I completely understand why people want to see it changed. But this time around though, I think things are very different, and it does benefit the Eagles because let's not forget they have decided to inject a total youth infusion into the roster this offseason. Going into last year, the average age of the Eagles roster was 26.6 years old, which was the 2nd oldest team in the NFL. Veteran leaders were then set free across the board, including names like Jason Peters and Malcolm Jenkins. Nigel Bradham was another, and a new breed of player was drafted, one that focuses on speed, and more speed. But without OTAs, however, these very raw players, several of whom will be expected to have key roles in 2020, will now have a mountain to climb when it comes to getting to NFL game speed. It's not just the rookie pool either. Last year's draft class is still carrying over some pretty heavy baggage for the coaching staff to lift. Whether it's JJ Arcega-Whiteside's development, Sharif Miller's lack of involvement in 2019, or simply ensuring that Andre Dillard is ready to go and take the baton from Jason Peters at left tackle, this offseason was absolutely vital and was ripped away in the most unpredictable fashion. Doug Peterson has tried to make the most of a very adverse situation by introducing things like virtual workouts and bringing in guest speakers such as Steve Kerr and Mike Trout to bring the group closer together. Impressed by the way his young players are taking in the information, all that's left for Peterson to do is get them onto a practice field. The blessing of a preseason being shortened is an obvious one. He will have more time on the practice field with his players, which is arguably far more valuable in the grand scheme of things. Those extra 2 weeks of practice will not only enhance cohesion in the locker room, but obviously go a long way in negating the on-field action lost during a cancelled OTA period. Not only that, but the team totally rebuilt their coaching tree this offseason, meaning that every second spent on the practice field is just as valuable for players who've been on the team a while and are having to get used to some new faces, just like the younger players too. But it's not all sunny in Philadelphia. An extra 2 weeks of practice is all well and good, but not even Peterson knows how that will look right now. The state may well be recovering from the COVID-19 outbreak better than most in the country, but the NFL wouldn't let location of a team play factor in what they can and can't do to give a competitive advantage. The Eagles, for instance, wouldn't be allowed padded practices if other franchises weren't in the interest of fairness, which could essentially mean that those extra 2 weeks of practice are just walkthroughs or individual drills or anything like that. And that's not to say they're not valuable, but in comparison to a full preseason game, it may be a little bit more detrimental. Now, Peterson spoke in his press conference about what training camp could look like this season, and it involved things like using both the NovaCare complex and, of course, Lincoln Financial Field, but if training camp is going to be borderline unrecognizable and they adhere to social distancing standards and of course wear masks and that kind of thing, then losing 2 preseason games is a crucial blow to a very young roster who need to get up to game speed as soon as possible. Obviously, every team is in the same boat, but the Eagles specifically have undergone a lot of changes this offseason, and there's a lot resting on the development of those young players. Whether it's a starting left tackle, a battler outside cornerback, or of course the entire future of the linebacker group, the Eagles have a lot of questions to answer. Preseason has long been the arena in which they're contested, and without those 2 games, it's now even harder to separate what is already a very fine margin when it comes to those positional battles. But what do you think, guys? Is 2 preseason games going missing a blessing or a curse for this Philadelphia Eagles team? Let me know down in the comments. From myself, Liam Jenkins, thank you again for tuning in. I'll see you soon.